Welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. This is our April 2024 Q&A, and we've got some great questions about what else, new GPUs coming, including the RTX 5090 and 5080. We'll go over the leaks and rumor, and what do I expect in terms of launch volume? Will you be able to get one? We'll also talk about DLSS versus FSR versus XeSS, upscaling, frame generation in competitive titles, and more. Remember, if you get value out of this video, give it a like, so it makes a huge difference to the channel, and of course, subscribe. Click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. With that, let's jump into it. This video is sponsored by Deepcool and the stylish new CH160 Mini ITX PC case. If you want maximum airflow and compatibility in an ultra small footprint, the CH160 is for you. Choose either black or white color schemes, install coolers with an amazing maximum height of 172 millimeters, use either SFX or ATX power supplies, and take your powerful PC on the go with a detachable lunchbox handle. And the CH160 packs 3 high-speed USB ports and a glass side panel, allowing you to customize your design. If you want maximum performance in a stylish and portable case, check out the CH160 using the links in the video description. Let's start off where else the GPU market, because we got announcements, or leaks at least, about new GPUs coming way sooner than we expected. We got a lot of questions about them, so let's jump into Zippy Pinhead. I love it. Assuming the rumors are reasonably accurate, that's all the stuff that just came out. What would be the use case for an RTX 5090? A 4090 can run monitors at 4K high refresh rates with max details. This is a case of technical capability outrunning any actual need. Well, first of all, let's talk about the rumors themselves. People are now saying that NVIDIA is in fact going to launch the 5090, which some folks thought the bulk of the rumors were that that was going to get pushed off into 2025 because NVIDIA wanted to sell through their RTX 4000 series stock. They just launched the Super Series, and AMD has effectively canceled their high-end dies for RX 8000. So NVIDIA doesn't have any high-end competition. But what people are saying is because the AI boom is heating up and AMD is beginning to put out AI chips that are somewhat in competition, at least with NVIDIA's solution. NVIDIA wants to maintain its edge, so they are accelerating the development of all of their architectures basically on the AI front, because they're just making money hand over fist. As a result, when they launched Blackwell, which is the next generation of GPU architecture for AI, for professional cards, basically AI cards, you're going to know the specs for the gaming cards. So they might as well launch them at the same time. Some people are saying it's just going to be a paper launch on the gaming side. Other people are saying, no, it's going to be an actual launch. We'll have to wait and see. But some people are saying that we're going to get an announcement for these cards as early as Computex, which NVIDIA is keynoting on June 2nd, 2024. That's just like about a month and a couple of weeks away. So we'll know one way or the other in terms of their Computex announcement, with the cards being available sometime either late third quarter or the fourth quarter. Late third quarter would be like September, possibly August, September, about kind of where the GPUs launched in the last generation. They launched in October of 2022. In terms of the performance that we're expecting, listen, the numbers are all over the place. I really would take all these numbers with a grain of salt. If you look at the 3090 Ti to the 4090 and you look at 4K, it's kind of hard because the CPUs that most people were using to benchmark back then, that was 5800X3D. Now we've got the 7800X3D. We know the 4090 has had huge CPU bottlenecks, even at 1440p in a lot of games. Now all of a sudden we're going to get a 5090. What kind of CPU bottlenecks are we going to see with the 5090 out there as well? Although, we're obviously expecting Ryzen 9000 series CPUs, including potentially a 9800X3D. So we just got a whole lot of tech coming, and it's hard to say what the use case is for the 5090. I play Helldivers 2, for instance, on 2 different PCs. I played on this PC here. It's got a 7900XT. I play it at 4K. It looks amazing. And I also play it sometimes on our video editing PC, which is a Ryzen 7950X with an RTX 4090. Now I use the NVIDIA Studio drivers on there because we have to do professional stuff on it. And I got to tell you, I feel like the performance of both machines is very, very good at 4K. That being said, I could see a 5090 coming in and giving maybe 30 to 50% more performance. And I would definitely take it, especially now that we got new monitors coming, like we've got 4K 240 hertz monitors coming. Those, you can push a lot more frames on those. I think there is definitely a use case for it. We've got 1440p, now 360 hertz, OLED monitors hitting the market. We've got a 480 hertz, 1440p gaming monitor hitting. There's just a lot of new gaming monitors out there. So we can definitely push performance in terms of the FPS that we can get out of these games, even at 4K. So I do think there is a use case for a 5090. What the pricing is going to be, and all that kind of stuff, we'll have to see. All right, Cause23 asks, what's my prediction on how the 5090 release will be? Will you be able to just walk into a Micro Center and buy one? Or is it going to be sold out for months due to scalpers and low supply? That's a tough one. I mean, so basically, if I were to pick up my crystal ball, so if I believe the rumors that NVIDIA is accelerating the GPU architecture because of AI, then you also would kind of stand to reason that they're going to produce as few of these GPUs on the gaming side as they can to say that they're out there, but at the same time, reserving most of their production for AI GPUs, which they're just selling like hotcakes. And the profit margins on those are absolutely insane. If you look at their earnings report, their AI stuff is like here and their gaming stuff is relatively flat too, year over year. It's like down here. And this part, the AI part, is it's like rocket ship to the moon growth. So from a business perspective, you'd kind of be dumb. You'd kind of be dumb to dump all your eggs or a lot of eggs or GPU dies into the gaming basket. You'd stick them in the AI basket where you sell those things for way more money. So if I were them, as a pure business owner, not as a tech enthusiast or PC gaming enthusiast, if you're just pure profit, which is kind of, unfortunately, I feel like where most companies are these days, especially publicly held ones, they're going to dump everything that they can into AI. So I think availability will probably be very thin for like the 5090. And I think scalpers, of course, are going to get involved in. They got involved for the 4090. Anytime you have the I have to have it tech product, and the 5090, just by virtue of it existing as now the new fastest GPU, even if they sell that thing for $2,500 or $3,000, something crazy, people are still going to scalp it because there's always at least a segment of the market out there with, I don't want to say unlimited funds, but they have enough to invest in and buy up the stock of the 5090. That's just something I think we have to understand. They're never going to do that with the lower end cards because they produce a lot more of those. I would say 5090 is probably going to be subject to scalpers. You're going to want to stand in line at Micro Center if you want to get one. That being said, we still don't know what the performance is. NVIDIA may not even allow the reviews to go live until they go on sale, which I think that what they did with several cards. But that's the 5090. Let's talk about the 5080 as well, because where NVIDIA has had problems in terms of price and performance, because once you have the top card, they have had trouble scaling that performance down the price tree into other models. So like if you look at the 4080, it was a terrible price to performance because they charge $1,200 for it. Are they going to charge $1,200 for a 5080 that's maybe 25% faster than the 4080? So it's basically like a 4090, but it's like $1,400 or $1,500. So we'll have to wait and see on all these new GPUs. I wouldn't expect very good availability, at least on the NVIDIA ones, because again, they're pushing everything into AI. If you want to walk into Micro Center, you might have to camp out this time to grab one. All right, Miramu asks, what's the best way to evaluate or compare DLSS/upscaling performance? Even with a 4090, if you want 4K 120, basically, you got to rely on upscaling, at least in some games. Maybe, but it seems so hard to do any card-to-card comparisons when it comes to upscaling. You were looking for a 4080 Super for 4K, and you just couldn't find a consistent way to evaluate upscaling. Benchmarking outlets, you're saying, seem to have given up on entirely and mostly just compare raw FPS numbers. I don't want to say, I don't agree that they've given up on it. I think that they've done the work to test out there to determine that raw FPS numbers, that native rendering is actually the best way to evaluate the card's performance. Let me go through this. First of all, games, they all implement different technologies. Some are just FSR, some are just DLSS, some are, I don't know if they're just XeSS, but out there, but you get this. So it's always kind of hard to compare in that realm. The second thing is for games that have implemented a number of technologies like FSR, DLSS, XeSS across that same game, the implementation of that version of game with DLSS versus a different game with DLSS, you do get kind of widely varying results. However, the upscaling technologies within that game tend to produce similar results. So for instance, if you use DLSS and you get, let's say, 15% uplift at 4K, you often find that you get about the same uplift using FSR. Now, obviously, they vary a little bit game to game, but roughly, they're roughly equivalent. It's not night and day difference. It's not like one is 70%, one's 10%, right? So within that realm, it makes sense to make some basic assumptions, which is that within each game, if multiple technologies are implemented, they seem to perform about the same. and that maybe comes down to just how the game engine works with it, that you're gonna look at the native FPS instead, because that's gonna give you a much better measure than looking at all this numbers over here where the variable, there's so many variables, and one of the variables is implementation. It's gonna kind of throw everything off, rather than just going ahead and looking at the raw FPS numbers, which is probably going to give you a much better sense of how it's going to perform vis-a-vis a different card using a different technology in the same game. So I agree with what they've done there. I also think they have evaluated FSR versus DLSS versus XeSS at 4K. And while I feel like we've paid too much attention to stack ranking things, like what's number one? Oh, this is the number one. Well, what separates number one and number two is so infinitesimal that it effectively doesn't matter, because I kind of feel like that's where we're getting with these upscaling technologies. Yes, DLSS tends to be better than FSR in a lot of titles, and the work has been done out there to show that, to demonstrate that. But does that mean FSR is unusable? Like, what is the baseline here? To me, FSR is very usable. XeSS, very usable technologies. And while you want them to continue to improve, and they are continuing to improve out there, I think they've all gotten to a place where you really have to try hard to see the problems with any of these technologies out there. So if you want to go ahead and use them, especially at 4K, I kind of feel like you're as good on FSR or XeSS as you are on DLSS. Now, if you're somebody who says, Jason, that's not my experience, then when you buy a graphics card, that's your preference, and know that that's your preference. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. If you have some kind of sensitivity to that, or you feel like you can tell the difference, I'm just sharing with you that I don't know a lot of people who actually can without like literally going frame by frame or pausing everything every 5 seconds, which is not how you play most games. Lots of confusion around using all these GPU technologies in competitive titles. King's Realm asks, are ray tracing and DLSS, are those useful in multiplayer games? Archangel, basically similar question. They're going to add in frame generation as well, which is the main culprit out there. The main culprit, the idea of fake frames. Are they useless? Are they a detriment? Maybe they just don't understand correctly. I actually think you're probably understanding fine. AMD and NVIDIA are guilty. They're guilty of misrepresenting these FPS numbers when it comes to frame generation on these competitive shooters. And I've called both of them out. Actually, I want to just give AMD a little bit of props here. They were very receptive to my criticism around them using this when I sat down with them at CES. So props there. Maybe they'll start changing the way they do this. But both companies have been guilty, at least in the past, of taking competitive titles and then using, AMD calls it fluid motion frames, and NVIDIA calls it frame generation. Those are not real frames. What's going on there is that the GPU is, you're on this frame, it's going to render this frame, and it inserts a fake frame here. In order to generate that fake frame, it has to look at the next frame to get the information to render this frame. And that adds latency, because now you're waiting basically for this frame here. And when you're trying to hit a flick shot, a sniper shot, something like that, you don't want to wait. You don't want latency. Latency is the time it takes between me doing something and it actually happening, or at least me seeing it on the screen. So we don't want that latency in there. And that's what fluid motion frames and frame generation on the NVIDIA side do. They introduce latency. The other thing is the names all sound the same. That's why another reason I think people get so confused. FSR, frame generation, fluid motion frames. You just so no. Any of that frame generation stuff, I think, has no place in competitive titles. And honestly, I don't want to see it marketed for competitive titles. In terms of ray tracing, this is a pretty short answer. No, ray tracing is something that will absolutely destroy your FPS. Not even for much visual up. There's a handful of titles out there where I think, yes, ray tracing looks great. None of them are competitive titles, and you should never turn on. I know Fortnite has ray tracing. Why would anyone turn on ray tracing in Fortnite? I don't get it. To me, that's just one of those things where NVIDIA helped them develop it so that they can say, oh, but look, in ray tracing Fortnite, we outperform AMD. But why would anybody do that in the first place? You get lower FPS. It's a competitive title. I want the most FPS. Come on, give me a break out there. And then, of course, we've got upscaling. Upscaling, I think, is a little bit more of a gray area, and I don't mind if they advertise on that. You folks out there, let me know down in the comments, what do you think of upscaling? Because again, I think that that's probably the least problematic, and I would turn that on. But I'll only turn it on if you felt like you couldn't get the FPS you wanted after you already turned down the settings to the most basic levels, the most competitive basic levels that are going to give you the most FPS. So I would only use that, and then I would say, consider a better graphics card. Or a lower resolution like 1080p rather than 1440p or 4K. That's how I see this. I don't think the confusion on these technologies is is necessarily just gamers not understanding it. I think it's been mismarketed as well. All right, Sekuo asks, what budget would I recommend for a first-time builder to be able to stream and game at 1080p to 1440p that will break the bank? Every month we do a best build. There are great builds there for 1440p that would be good for streaming and gaming, starting at like $750 up to $1,000 and a little bit more. So check that out. We just did one for April. We got some great builds in there. Check that out. But I want to use this question also to talk a little bit about the value of this market. We have been in an absolute golden age for PC building. I know people are like, Jason, what are you talking about? GPU prices are so high. Yes, the price on GPUs has gone up, but the price of literally every other component has crashed, has absolutely cratered. You can Ryzen 5600, a super high performance gaming CPU just a couple of years ago, and will still power a lot of GPUs right now, and you can get it for 120 or 140 bucks. That's insane. You can get B550 motherboards dirt cheap. DDR4 RAM is dirt cheap. DDR5 RAM, given the fact that you get 32 gigs of it, right? There really aren't any 16 gig kits out there at the speeds that we want them at. So you're gonna end up with 32, but you get 32 gigs is dirt cheap compared to where RAM was just a couple of years. SSDs are dirt cheap. NVMe SSDs are dirt cheap compared to where they were just a couple of years ago. Cases have come down, like coolers. Like, look at the air coolers that we have now, and they're like $35. And those used to be $100 like NHD15 Noctua coolers, and they get the same performance now for like $35. AI liquid coolers prices come down. So I get, on the one hand, people who maybe you have a system and you just want a new GPU, you're feeling like, oh, this market sucks. But if you want to build a PC, this market is better than we've ever had before. To me, this is a great value market. You can build a gaming PC for as little as $650. It will do very, very well. Super high frame rates at 1080p or 60 FPS at 1440p with like an RTX 3060 12GB card. Or you can spend a little bit more and get a super high performance system that will allow you to do kind of everything that you want to do for not that much, for like $1,000 bucks. And I can't remember a time when we got this level of value out of building a new PC. Again, I want to understand the separation between people who have a system and just want to buy a GPU and they're looking at GPU prices are higher, and then those who were looking to build a whole new system because everything else is so much lower by comparison. You can spend a little extra on the GPU and it's not that big a deal, and it actually still is better value. So insane amounts of value still to build right now. Haroon Ahmed asks, hey Jason, you help thousands of gamers around the world to make perfect builds and enjoy gaming. Oh, I thank you. I appreciate that. We really try, and I absolutely love doing it. What are my all-time favorite games? Ooh, that's a hard one. You're curious to know. So there's certain games that I think of. I've been building game PCs and gaming since the 1980s. That's right. You heard that right. The 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, now we're in the 2020s. So picking a favorite game out of that is really hard. So there's certain games I'm very nostalgic for. Wizardry, the very first Wizardry game that came out. It was mostly like a lot of text in that Wizardry game. The early Ultima games like Ultima 2, Ultima 3, in particular Ultima 3 and Ultima 4, I really played the heck out of those games in the 80s. Loved those games. I absolutely loved Doom. More modern games that are my favorites right now. Obviously, I played World of Warcraft for quite some time. We've been playing it since 2009, so there's that. Helldivers 2 has been amazing, despite the bugs. I love that, playing that game. And then if I think about other games that are more story-based, I really do like Horizon Zero Dawn. Was probably one of my, I felt like that game really got shortchanged because Elder Scrolls launched at the same time, which is also a very good game, but I loved the story. So there's some games I get super invested in the story. That was probably the one I was most invested in, other than the game I'm super excited that's coming out very soon. Homeworld 3 is finally coming out. I played Homeworld back in like, I don't know, when did it come out, like 98 or 99? I played the second one. I played Homeworld Cataclysm. I played the remaster version of Homeworld. I absolutely love, Go Hagarans, right? That's another game that I'm super excited about that should be coming out very, very soon. So those are a handful. I could probably sit here and just keep dishing them off, but gaming is pretty awesome out there. Remember, if you got value out of this video, give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel, especially this guy right here. And of course, subscribe. Click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. Hey, speaking of cool content, did you check out our best build series? Mr. Bear put together 3 amazing builds for you, 750, 1000, and a great high-end production system. Check it out, and we'll catch you on the next one.